welcome everybody again to another episode of YBMcast Tennessee. They said it couldn't happen, but it's happened. We've got a coach and an umpire actually on the same page, kind of like each other a little bit, and here we are. We've got a special guest today, Brandon Greer, who's ump for Game 7 for a long time. I'm sure he's with some other organizations too, does some older age groups. But without further ado, I want to introduce Brandon. And Brandon, if you can, just kind of give us an idea of who you are, how long you've been doing this, why in the world did you get into umpiring, stuff like that.
Yeah, you really got the bottom of the barrel, didn't you, Baron? I went to Lebanon High School, played baseball, uh, played for Dyersburg State with Coach George White and Robert White. Who they just recently retired. But made umpiring my side gig, made some extra money. Got married, had kids. Kids got old enough to play ball, started coaching. So I stopped umpiring, for I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, and then uh, my oldest got he's 17 now, but about the time he was 14 or 15. I stopped coaching and I started umpiring again. So I've been with Game 7. This will be my fourth year, um, and I mean I've had nothing but good experiences with Game 7. They're awesome.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you do this a long time, and you've done it a long time. I didn't realize, for some reason I knew Dyersburg State, but I didn't realize it was with those two guys at that time, and that's and you talk about some Hall of Famers. Just now,
Yeah,
stop doing it. That's tough. What position did you
it
play at
is.
Dyersburg?
Well, so I was the catcher and first baseman. Of course, I always say first baseman. If you got a guy that can hit, put him in first if you can't find a place to play him. So I was the first baseman and catcher. And then so my the fall the fall semester, we had two guys get hurt on third base. So they tried me over at third base. Ended up getting a guy from Cumberland that was going to have to redshirt. Ended up transferring. One of my really good friends. He caught, and I played third. So, funny story. We played Vol State, and the very first batter comes up, rips one right down the line. I backhand it, throw it over parking lot. I mean, I asked him to. I asked Coach if he had ever had anybody do that since, and he said he hasn't. That was 2001. He has not had anybody do it since.
That's pretty
So
good.
that's how
That's
good I
pretty good.
was. That's why I'm officiating.
Well, it takes all kinds, especially if you're a catcher, you try to go corners after that and try to make some plays. Every catcher says they can play third. Every third baseman says they can catch. It's just that's part of the game.
Sure.
But
Right.
do you remember when we met? Because I think it was about 3 years ago. I had maybe a 15-year-old team at the time, and I can't remember when it was or where it was. But the way you called the game, and for some reason we just had connection. Then I saw you the next week with the little guys. Like, man, you're everywhere.
Okay. The moment that stands out for me was the World Series, the 14U, when you guys I can't remember if you guys won it or you placed second, but it was against the team out of Kentucky. But anyways, I really liked how you talked to the players. That's what kind of drew me to you. I liked how you talked to your players. I liked how you coached. Um, I mean, yeah. So the World Series, and I guess that was 2021. That's what stands out to me.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah, 2021. That makes sense time wise. You play these tournaments and you get out there and you got your team, you're ready to go, and you see the umpires coming up. You're finishing your in and outs, and you're like, do I know either one of these guys? Because if you do it long enough, you end up knowing a bunch of the umpires, and it can go one or two ways. Like, okay, this game is going to be run well. It's going to be in and out. There's not going to be any time lapses. Who cares about the calls? Forget the calls. It's either, we're going to have a lot of start and stops, it's going to be this, or it's just going to be a well managed game. So every time Brandon will show up, and I'm not saying this to get calls later because I don't get any calls from Brandon. Let me tell you that. But it's a matter of just he's running the game efficiently. He knows how to deal, especially with the younger kids. There's not a bunch of we're not calling a balk immediately. He's instructing the kids just as much as the coaches are. So that's what I appreciate as a coach. Nothing really is happening at 10U, 11U, 12U right now specifically, but we can at least instruct these kids from an umpire's perspective and a coach's perspective.
I agree. You make it easy though, Baron. That's as much coaching as it is umpiring. You've always been open to just having a conversation. That's it. It's never. I don't know. That's just that's appreciated on our end. Um, Not that you make it easy. I mean, you have a way of holding me accountable, but at the same time, it's the conversation.
That brings up a good point. And I'm not the best at it. I'm not the worst at it, but I've seen some of the worst at it. When a call is just maybe in that gray area, and a coach wants to come talk to you, what is the right way to do it from an umpire's perspective? What do you like to see from a coach if you're coming out? We always say the same thing at the home plate meeting. If you have a conversation, come talk to me. That doesn't always happen. Emotions get going, craziness
Absolutely.
happens. But what is the right way to do it from an umpire's perspective?
Yeah, and touching on that too, my son does it with me, and I've told him he doesn't have kids yet, but as far as letting the emotions get into it, I've told him you have to look at it like if your kid was treated unfairly, what kind of emotions do you have? Rage, anger, right? So that's why I feel like a lot of coaches come out, the wrong way. But the process would be go to the umpire that made the call, get your time, and just go out there and say, hey, what'd you see? That's what I like to hear is, hey, how did you see it? What did you see? That way, the coach knows what he saw. If he saw it differently, then it is what it is. But if there's a rule there, that's where that gets into. If there's a rule that you can overturn a call, that's the way to do it. But as far as a judgment call, what did you see? That's what I would like a coach to come out and say. See, one of the most overturned calls, or everybody wanting to ask for help, is the first baseman that pulls his foot off the first base, right? Well, in a two-man crew, your first base umpire or your field umpire is out of position right there. He's looking directly at the foot, but he doesn't have the side angle to see where it's coming off. And so most coaches, they come out yelling and screaming, hey, he pulled his foot off. He pulled his foot off. Okay, well, here's the thing. All you got to do is go to the umpire that made the call and say, "Hey, do you mind getting help with that?" I'll always in the field on that. If I'm out of position, I will always get help.
Yep. That's a good point. I like that. Speaking of these tournaments, and I've, like I said, we see you run around it, whether or not you have our games or not. How many games are you doing on a Saturday or a Sunday, whether it's Game 7 or whoever? How many games are you seeing as an umpire?
13 a weekend is kind of the magic number. Usually a 7 on Saturday and then 6 on Sunday. Like Josh does my scheduling. He does awesome. He tries to give me 13. 14 is pushing it. That's a lot. But come World Series time when it's 105 degrees and nobody's wanting to officiate, it is what it is.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
now that
13
the
is the
old
magic number for a weekend.
13's still a lot, man. That is because I mean you can see,
It is.
especially wearing all the gear. It's hot.
Oh, Monday. Trust me, I'm dragging butt.
Absolutely. 13. How many do you try to do a tournament every weekend? Surely you take time off every once in a while.
Oh, my wife wouldn't let me do it every weekend. But yeah, I'll take off maybe 3 or 4 weekends a summer,
Are you
which
still doing
is
the
not
the
enough.
high school
Not
age?
enough. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. I believe me. I know that too. My wife is. We have a love hate relationship with summer baseball because it kills all the vacation time. And so you're trying to find that
Yeah.
weekend, and then a tournament will pop up, and you got to go. So I feel it. I feel exactly where you are. And let's talk about this. So during these weekends when you're doing 13 games, now that I mean, you've done a ton of baseball games, ton of Game 7 tournaments. You got anywhere from 15 to 30 teams sometimes at these tournaments. The intensity level with each individual team is different. Coaches are intense, different levels. There's music. Some of them don't do music. All kinds of stuff. Over the course of your time doing this, have you seen travel baseball in Tennessee become more intense, kind of the same, or what have you seen just kind of from your perspective?
I think as a state, as a whole, we've I mean made jumps as far as from 8U all the way up to high school. I think Tennessee as a whole is better at the exposure that we get at baseball. But yeah, travel baseball game seven. I mean these tournaments are loaded every single weekend. Um, you're talking 25, 30 teams every single weekend from 7U to 14U. But yeah, in the past 4 years, it's definitely increased. And before that, I mean, I coached in Game Seven tournaments from I don't know 2014, and back then I think it was BPA. But I don't know, you probably had 10, 12, just hoping the tournament would make that weekend. Uh, and now, I mean, it's unheard of if a tournament didn't make, or if an age
Yep,
group didn't.
absolutely. Yeah, and that usually will happen. We've got some other organizations that move in, and they all do something very very well on their own. But it's very very rare that a Game Seven tournament does not make.
Right.
It's kind of a gravitational. I mean, and quite honestly, I'm not saying this, and believe me, I'm not trying to. But there's for Game Seven's got a lot of great umpires. You know that the game's going to be run. There's you, and I mean, there's tons. There really is a lot of really good umpires. Game Seven. You go somewhere else, you have no idea what's happening.
And a lot of that has to do with their camp that they do. Um, I've only been to their camp, but I've been told that their umpiring camp is. I mean, people come from everywhere to go to it. I mean, from any organization. And I've watched. There's 18-year-olds out there that's just as good, if not better than me, just from going to camp after camp after camp. So yeah, I mean, the camp has a lot to do with it, in my opinion, as far as with Game Seven and the quality of umpires they have. And I mean,
So talk about that camp. I wasn't aware that it was. For some reason, I thought it was just a couple hours, but it's apparently a significant camp.
it's a weekend. It's a Friday,
Yep.
Saturday, Sunday. As long as weather permitting, you're supposed to have two classroom days and then a field day. And sometimes it just turns out to be classroom days. Or I've never been and it not have at least one day in the field. You try to get out in the field every day for a little while, but it just really depends on the weather. But it's in the brutal part of the summer. It's August. Um, it's I mean it's good. There's guys out there from minor league baseball umpires to league ball for little league umpires.
That's pretty cool. I've got written down on my paper that I wanted to make sure I asked you, and this is just something I've always thought about, and I've never really got a good answer on it, and I'm gonna ask you, which one is worse to you as an umpire when you're back there behind the plate? Which chirping is worse? Is it the chirping coming from the coach, or is it the chirping coming from mom or dad back there on the bleachers? Which one? Which one makes you feel just worse? The anger.
The ones that sit right behind you, and if you're calling balls and strikes, because they're the ones that can see the corners. The coaches I don't too much worry about them because they can't see the corners. They're sitting in the dugout or on their bucket. I'm not worried about that. The guys that sit right behind you, that's the ones I worry about because if they say blue, that was off the plate. He's right. So it's just that's the I guess that none of them really get on my nerves or bother me. It's just that's what I stress about is the parents that sit right behind me, right behind home plate.
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to go. You were going to say that because I mean I've heard that a bunch of times from a umpire. Just coaching on a bucket or sitting over in the dugout, like, man, it looked like a strike, coach. It was 2 feet outside. Well, it might have been. I have no idea. I can't see. I could have been.
Hey,
No
you
clue.
know where I sit? So my youngest kid, you know where I sit? I sit right behind home plate. I'm no different. I'm no different than any other parent.
That's funny.
You gotta hold you
It's,
gotta hold these umpires accountable. You can't push it too far, but you got to hold them accountable. They're making a living.
well, what is the too far? Is it dependent on the coach? Is it just kind of ebb and flow, whatever happens? What's the? I mean, I know there's magic words, but what is the too
I mean,
far?
I give a call of a batter, and then it's over. The next batter comes up, listen to it. After the next batter comes up, that's it. You know, it's over. Because at the end of the day, that call right there is not going to make or break your team. You can make it about that, and make sure that you know your kids act that way because the kids are going to follow the coach. Um, and but you know that call's not going to be the end all be all if you don't let it be the end all be all. So I give it a batter.
Okay.
And you
We
know,
teach.
I'm a very open umpire. I'm very open, and I'll tell you, look, the call that bothers me the most is the rule that I missed. Because in my opinion, there's no excuse to not know a rule. That's your job. As far as your judgment, way you see something, yeah, that can be open for interpretation. That's different. But as far as the rule, it's it's not okay to miss a rule. So if I miss a rule, you get a batter. You get a batter to pretty much give it to me, and I'll take it. Be respectful. You know,
Oh,
there's 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds on the field, but I mean, I'll listen to you.
that makes a lot of sense. And speaking of 10 years old and respect, we try to teach our even right now our catchers to go up, introduce themselves, respect, give them a handshake, talk to them. You've got to do your job to block that umpire, and if you have a question, you can respectfully ask the umpire. Are you seeing that? I mean, hopefully a lot of people are doing that, but
They do.
is it becoming better? Because I also see some 11 and 12-year-old catchers that want to argue every call too. So there's somewhere in the middle, but we try. I'm just hoping it's getting better.
They do. They do. For the most part, when I come, when I walk to home plate, and you know it's the first inning, the catchers will turn around. They'll shake my hand. They shake it firm handshakes. I'm very impressed, you know, with the catcher when they do that. Most of, you know, not most of. I don't know if I've really had any problems with catchers. Uh, Catchers was, you know, was my position, so that they not only do they get a little leeway, but also I hold them to a higher standard than the rest of the team. They're supposed to be smarter. They're supposed to be think outside the box. They're supposed to be, you know, everything's going against you right now. You're supposed to be calm. Go calm that pitcher down, and I'll tell them that. You know, I love talking to kids like that, giving them, you know, the game within the game. Uh, and that's why I think that's why I like doing younger ages because when you get up to high school and college, that kind of goes out, and it's more of just a you know this is your job. You keep your mouth shut and you do your job, and that's it. And I love being around kids.
Yeah. If we can get our catchers to kind of understand managing the game, and we're fortunate we've got a really good catcher who absolutely loves catching. That's key.
Oh
Because
yeah,
if you don't like it back there, you get hurt real fast. I don't care how much gear you get on. So
you're right.
it's uh it's cool to see. I've seen you have those interactions with the kids, not just the catchers. I mean, you'll find somebody coming off the field, and you'll talk to them about a play or a balk, and do you understand why I called that? Do you understand what happened here? So those type of games you want to be involved in. So you're doing a heck of a job with that. That is for sure. How do you see yourself doing this for a while? Or you're not leaving me, are you? I got a while to do this, man.
For as long as I can, I mean, I love doing it. I couldn't think of any better besides you know with my family. I couldn't think of a better way to spend a Saturday or a Sunday as far as on the field, baseball field. That's that's my place.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. Do you have any crazy stories that you're allowed to say without saying teams or names or anything like that?
Well, of course, you know, this past weekend that was pretty cool. That what happened. You go up to your boy between innings and you say, hey, you know, might as well do it now. When's the better time to do it? And as you walked off, I said, tell him solo home runs just aren't as fun. And then he kind of thought about it and looked at me. He goes, they're pretty fun. And it was I don't know if it was the first pitch or the second pitch, and he goes yard. And I was like, oh, I love that. That was
Yeah,
yeah.
that's funny. I was
The
walking past
weekends
and
are
we had
full of
no.
cool stories like
I love it, man, and I'm glad that the stories are going that direction instead of when we were growing up, there were some really crazy stories about parking lots and all this kind of stuff. Umpiring has gotten a bad rap over the last, I don't know, 2, 3 years for some reason, especially at the high school ages. I don't know why, but I really do think that we've got some really good umpires that are doing some good stuff with these little kids. And sometimes it helps as a coach because you just shut up because the umpire's going to talk to him. Just let him talk
Yeah,
and just get out of the way. He's going to say the same thing I'm saying, but it's a different voice.
true. Yeah.
So I like it. It's awesome. I mean, I'm glad there's no horrible story. I know you have some, but you don't need to. We
Oh
don't
yeah.
want to call anybody out or say anything like that. But
No.
throwing somebody out of a game, that's never fun. I'm sure you've done it. When you do that, I'm curious. I've been on in both sides of this. I've been in situations where I probably should have been tossed at the older ages, and then sometimes when I did get tossed and didn't think I should, and I always think about it all night long. As an umpire, when you throw somebody out, do you think about it, or is it done with you?
Honestly, out of all the years that I've done it, I've only thrown a handful of guys out of the game. It's language, which that'll get you gone quick with me. If it just escalates and it's you won't stop and it's just on and on and on, I don't I don't like throwing people out for that because I feel like that we're better than that. Like let's move past this. Uh, Language, I guess, would be my number one. Um, and honestly, the two people that come off the top of my head that I have thrown out for language after the game, they apologized. Like, and it was two people that I would never, think like that. But again, when you feel like your kids are being treated unfairly, sometimes you act ways that aren't the best, that paint you in the best light. I mean, it's not their best moment, so I don't judge them for that. I just can't, as far as the language, you can't be on the field.
No, I agree, and I mean, like you said, and that's a really good point. I haven't thought about it like that. When you have kids out there, and it spurs your emotions, whether or not it's your kid or not. It's just when you start coaching these kids, they all become just they're yours. When they're out there on the field, they are your kid, and
Yeah.
you feel very emotional with them, and you want to talk, but you're also trying to encourage them that this game is going to absolutely beat you up. So we cannot show
Right.
emotion. We cannot come off the handle. And when a coach does that, and I've done it
And
too,
we're
when
not
it
perfect, right?
happens, right? And when it happens, you have to be able to look at team and be like, hey, that's my fault. I absolutely did something I told you not to do, and we've got to just continue to go through this. But when you said that, it makes a lot of sense from a coaching perspective. But so
Yeah,
that was good to
I
hear.
love. I'll show grace as much as I possibly can because I understand. It's just when the language starts, that's when other coaches will hold me accountable. Well, he said this, and as a matter of fact, he did say this, so I have to toss him now. Other than that, it's probably to a fault. I'll listen to you. I'll talk to you uh, more than I probably should. But there's a lot of good coaches too for Game 7. I know we're just mainly talking about the Game 7 organization, which is great with me. The coaches are great. Most the kids, they're respectful. They're great. I don't have a lot of bad things to say about them.
No, I don't think there is. We just this past weekend, like you're talking about, we were competing in a what it was called the Spring Blast here in Tennessee, out in Hendersonville, and it was a great tournament. There were 16 teams out there, 15 or 16, I can't really remember. And I mean, everybody was respectful. Coaches, we all know each other. Everybody was great. Everybody's just trying to just keep this thing going. We're about a third of the way through the season for 10U right now. Some guys will go even longer, but I'll go until right at June, and then I'll pick up with the older guys. So it's everybody's trying to do baseball. Everybody's there because we all love it, including the umpires. And I think it's Game Seven's got something really good going on in Middle Tennessee right now, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, well, I really appreciate you, Brandon. I know you're up against it, and I thank you for taking time during the day, wherever you are, is in a parking lot, and I appreciate that a lot, man. I know it's tough getting on the phone and doing these things, but we don't give enough appreciation to umpires, so definitely want to make sure that we appreciate you and everybody else. I know Game 7 does, Is there anything else before we cut off, Brandon?
No, I'm good, man. Thank you. Yeah, I do anything for you, Baron.
Well, give me a call
You're
every
one of the
once in a
good
while,
ones.
and we'll call it even. Just
That's
kidding.
right.
I like it, everybody. I appreciate everybody joining us this week. Thanks for Brandon joining us. Game 7's got a lot of good umpires. Brandon's one of them. If we had them all, we could do a weekly thing just on umpiring. YBMcast Tennessee. Everybody have a great weekend. Please, it really does help if you like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. It helps us out a lot if you enjoy it. Send it to your friend; they might enjoy it too. It all helps, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks.